did send you an email outlining things that you've helped me get through. If you could just read that to understand how grateful I am for you and your show, that would be very much appreciated. Now, so basically, I'm going to kind of just describe what I feel the universe is just by listening to just various different people. So I'm a determinist. It seems like based on mathematical equations that everything is governed by variables. This is why you can figure out how long a train ride will go without taking like 2 hours to do the math, right? So once you realize how prevalent this is in reality, it seems like everything, including the Big Bang, everything in reality is unfolding based on variables that were present at the Big Bang. So I don't believe in free will, I don't believe in choice, I don't believe in the soul, and I don't believe in a common understanding of God because I don't see any symbols for these in any equation, so it doesn't seem logical to me.
I don't know how you got soul into that list, but since I can basically agree that the nonsense of the notion of a soul is the most obviously dead concept in all of theology, I just don't see how you can tie it to that, but I don't think that's your point, so we'll move on.
Thank you. All right, so now I'm not saying this is true or anything. Obviously, I'm sure you have many arguments against it, but I've come across an argument of the unmoved mover. And so just kind of thinking about this argument, the way it seems to me is like this unmoved mover must exist outside of time, so it must be timeless. The variables put into place in the Big Bang, aka the laws of physics, must also be in some way, shape, or form with this unmoved mover in order for them to put them into action, or it to put it into action. I don't think this unmoved mover is sentient, by the way, if it exists at all. So it seems like these variables must exist outside the universe, or with this unmoved mover. Now,
the problem...
It would also seem...
So the problem here, and I'm fine with you noting that it doesn't have to be an intelligent agent, which would have been my first or second objection. The problem with the unmoved mover thing is that this is an inference from within our universe to the extent of our understanding. Yeah. There are a number of hypothetical models, including a multiverse, which isn't necessarily an unmoved mover. And the tendency is to try to do a regression back to say at some point there must be some unmoved mover, some uncaused thing that acts as a cause. Otherwise, you get an infinite regress. And so the entire justification for this is based on the idea that an infinite regress isn't possible. But that's not really demonstrable.
I really apologize. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
Again, I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm kind of just presenting an argument against people who present this to me, and then how I feel like a moral system can be derived by this. Do you mind if I just kind of...
Wow. Okay, so you just took like a hard left turn.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's
again, okay. I apologize for this. If I can just kind of go.
Go.
It'd be great. All right. So this unmoved mover, again, I don't think it is true, but it must have some type of quality that does not exist in our reality. It seems, again, I'm not going to assert this, but otherwise it seems like there would be some way to detect it, some way to see that it is present in our reality. So now, one quality that can't exist in a reality that is a determinist reality based on variables is randomness. Now, again, I'm not saying this is the case whatsoever, but it seems like the maximum explanation for this unmoved mover would be a timeless being of randomness acting on all potential laws of physics until something can be created, whether it's a universe or a multiverse. Again, I'm not saying this is the case. It just seems like this might be a potential argument against it. And I don't think, again, I'm not a physicist. This is all pure conjecture. This is nothing. But just thinking about it, it kind of seems like it could potentially tie into the quantum fluctuations that Lawrence Krauss talks about in a universe from nothing. Again, not a physicist, just saying like this randomness quality to me, but this is all assumptions. Now, if I were to derive a moral system in this universe, what I would do is I'd say, if you want to learn how to be a doctor, you go to medical school. If you want to learn how to be a lawyer, you go to law school. If you want to learn how to live, we should be looking at life. So there are characteristics that all life has, but there are things that all life does as well, such as evolve. Now, if all life evolves to help it flourish within its environment, it seems like this is what we should be doing as well. But I can't snap my finger to evolve. However, evolution has granted us the data processing power to perform science, to build planes that help us fly, or machines to lift 10 times our body weight. So while we can't choose to evolve, we can perform science to circumvent evolution to help our species exist or flourish within our environment. It kind of seems like science is the moral system. Now, I'm not saying everyone should be scientists, but because we obviously need garbage men and accountants and all of these things, but it seems like career should be a calculation of what the species needs, what you are good at, and what you're interested in so that you can serve the species as efficiently as possible. I'm done if you have any critiques.
I think you're putting way too much stuff in that doesn't necessarily connect. So first of all, back to the unmoved mover and the assertion or belief that it's timeless. I don't know how that can be justified when you have no way of investigating it. Right. What we can probably say is that if it's external to our local universe and space-time is a product of our local universe, then it would certainly be outside or not bound by our time, but that doesn't mean that there's not like a meta time, because you have to have some time. Any action requires some time, and so there would have to be some time to perform it. But all that's separate, because when you try to spin this off with regard to morality, first of all, I don't necessarily know that the universe is hard deterministic as opposed to potentially soft deterministic, and there's still a question as to whether or not things that are truly random can happen, or if there are just patterns that we are unable to detect. And so I don't see that as a settled issue. But this deal about trying to figure out the best way to live a life, to me, that's true irrespective of a timeless unmoved mover or determinism,
it wasn't necessary,
or any of those things.
Yes, I was just bringing up this unmoved mover just as a thought, because I knew that you'd come up with an argument or either confirm mine, and it seems like you obviously have a better argument than mine, which is perfect.
Well,
really, the correct
go ahead, Phil.
The whole moral system.
Yeah, that argument. I remember you mentioned it before towards the front of the call that there are some believers that can use that argument, and that's I've experienced that a few times where it's, oh, well, we have this universe, but we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. It started going through all those different preaching. Well, in order to cause the universe, it had to exist before the universe, and time happened after the Big Bang, so therefore it must be timeless, things of that sort. And by the end of that whole spiel, as he went through all of these pieces, it was like, okay, well, that's an interesting hypothesis you have there. So now what can we do to substantiate that hypothesis? What can we now investigate? What can we start researching into finding out if that's actually the case? And he was kind of...
Are you talking about the moral system, sir?
Not the moral system, but the unmoved mover, who's also timeless, who has no cause that caused this universe to come into play. But that was part of his justification. It wasn't his justification as to why he was a Christian. That was a whole different thing. But just how he was approaching that argument in the first place. It was literally ignorance. It was just an argument from ignorance, saying that, well, we don't have this, but it must be timeless. It must be. And I'm like, well, how are we going to prove that it must be these pieces? And he had no answer, any satisfactory answer to that. He wasn't planning to do any more research. He was just good. He was cool with that he figured out these logical questions, and so therefore he's good to go, and he went on with his belief. But anyway, that's an aside to that. But like Matt said, I don't think the moral system that you were kind of coming up with, I don't think was dependent on that unmoved mover or anything on that side. And so I was interested as to why you kind of put those together in that way, in the mix of your spiel.
Just kind of a two-part question.
Yeah, and so morality is I think people make it more complicated than it is, but it's certainly more complicated than I'm going to do in the next 3 minutes. But I've already spoken about it a bunch, including if you just look up superiority of secular morality. But setting aside the issue of unmoved movers and timelessness and free will or anything else, it seems that you are building a reasonable secular foundation for a moral system. And there's a number of different ways that can be done. I'm just not sure if the first part wasn't relevant to the second part, then I'm not quite sure what else you would want me to comment on, because...
Oh, sorry. Basically, just if you think that the logic behind, if you want to learn to be a doctor, go to medical school. If you want to learn, if that's how to derive.
Okay, there is no morality school.
Oh no, I get that with quotes, right? If everything's operating based on variables, the idea of morality doesn't actually exist. But I'm just saying, morality is in quotes. I'm just saying, if really the question is how do we live? I'm just wondering if you think that watching how life lives, realizing that it evolves, realizing that we have the ability to circumvent this process.
So, but we're not circumventing evolution.
Sorry. I mean, okay, so evolution can grant animals the ability to lift 10 times their body.
I know you're rereading what you read before, and I'm saying that's not.
Yes.
This is not circumventing evolution. The fact that I can create tools to help me improve and expand my life is independent from the biological process of evolution. That is a change in allele frequencies over time. That is random or perhaps non-random mutations that are affected on by the environment. Now, we can manipulate portions of our environment, but that's something that we have certainly evolved to do. It's not like we've trumped evolution.
No. Again, I don't think that. And again, English, unfortunately, is not my strong suit. I'm really just trying to say that if all species evolve and evolution helps them to flourish in the environment, and we have the ability to perform science to help us to do this without waiting for evolution, I just feel like we should. It's the type of thing I'm getting at.
Okay. Now I don't think we're talking about morality at all. It sounds like you're beginning on an argument for transhumanism.
Yeah. Okay, so again, basically, for me, morality is just how to live. Like, as a determinist, I don't think the word morality makes sense. I think it's the question of how should we live, and I just think that we answer that question by seeing how other organisms live. And if they all evolve, to me, it just seems like we should be doing science to help us flourish within the environment as well. Now, as I said, like I'm just repeating this stuff, so I'm sure you know where I'm going. But
no, because when you say we should look at how other life does this, other life doesn't do what we do. Other life doesn't have the capabilities to do what we do.
I know. Other life does evolve, though. And evolution can grant them
evolve is something that happens to populations. It's not something that it's not something that individuals or populations do. So if you say that if we want to learn how to live life, we should look at how other things do it, and then you start making arguments in favor of using science, well, other organisms don't use science.
I know, but they do evolve, and evolution gave us a data processing power to help perform science that can.
But evolution. But the fact that things evolve, the fact that things change, is irrelevant to morality. It is irrelevant to life because the evolutionary process of the vast majority of species that have ever existed led them to extinction, which I would say is not a goal, right?
But true, but we have.
So if 99.9% of all species that have ever existed, evolution led them to extinction, then why would you use that as an example of what we should look to in order to guide our lives?
Because we have the data processing power to avoid the things that led them to evolution, and we have the data processing power to guide towards the things that help them flourish.
We may. I completely agree that we may be able to impact whether or not we're likely to go extinct. We also may be impacting it to hasten it, depending on some decisions we make. But I don't know what this has to do with morality, other than saying, if the goal is to continue living and living well with respect to morality, then not going extinct is something we should try to avoid.
Yes, and I just think like if we use data processing power to perform science to help avoid these.
Don't we do that?
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we do. I'm just saying people don't see it. Again, I don't like using the word moral because it doesn't exist in this context. Unfortunately, I just don't have the linguistic skills to move past this. To me, it just seems like everywhere in life, if you're trying to learn how to do something, you're learning from people who do it. Now, we can't just look at other humans to figure out how humans live. So
that's not the only way to learn things.
No, I know.
So
I know.
learning things, you don't always rely on what other people have done. You know, the discovery, and I kind of call it a discovery. There may be an argument as to whether it's invention, but the discovery of calculus and stuff, it's not like they learned it from somebody else.
It's experimentation and repetition that led to that emergent truth.
Sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I understand the point or can get to it fairly. But we're technically over time, and I think that Eric, is there a question waiting out there? No.
You're good.
Okay, then I'll give you one more chance to try to get me to where you are.
Again, I'm not trying to say that this is that this is 100% sure. I'm just someone who was struggling with some things and tried to look at a world around me to figure out a way that I think I should live. What I landed on is this is what it looks like life does, and it helps life to flourish. So again, I'm not saying that this is how we have to live. I just
Okay.
we have the data processing power to build tools and machines, which is often what we do. However, we just
you keep adding. So you have a great point, but you keep adding things to it that aren't relevant. It seems to me that what you're talking about doing is, for example, when I talk about morality, or when Sam Harris talks about morality, we have a foundation of well-being. If somebody doesn't want to call that morality, that's their prerogative, but we're talking about well-being, irrespective of whether you consider it moral, irrespective of whether or not you like that word. And the argument that tends to come is you have no justification for why anyone does or should care about well-being. And my answer is, you're correct, but we do. And the justification for it is that caring about well-being is in our best interest, which is the thing that we care about. If you want to say that the universe has no implicit requirement that we care about well-being, you are correct. The universe doesn't give a rat's ass about us. And there's nothing implicit in the universe about us caring about well-being. But we do. And as long as you and I both care about well-being, we can talk about better ways to get there, which may include the use of science and data processing and all that stuff. But if all you're getting to is that you have come to the conclusion that we do care about well-being, and that you think this is a fine foundation upon which to build a guide to life or ethics or morality or whatever somebody wants to call it, then congrats. You're now where I am.
perfect.
Okay.
Well, we're not perfect, but we're working to get closer to perfect. On that note, I got to let you go.
I say perfect because I have yet to have someone actually lay down things like that for me. So you've given me something to work on and build on. That's why I say perfect.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm glad we could potentially be helpful.